Time for another edition of Ask Mike, and joined by Mike Irwin. We're recapping the Razorbacks game at Tennessee. Mike, a sight a lot of us thought we would never see again. Bobby Petrino leading the Razorbacks on the field there at Neyland Stadium. Really good effort. Game just kind of got away from there in the second half.
Yeah, 14-year journey back, and I didn't think it would happen, not as a head coach, even interim, and I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't. I went into that just a total blank.
I think a lot of people didn't know exactly what to expect, but the effort was better. Still some problems defensively, but it did seem like credit to Bobby. He got the buy-in. He got them ready to play. All right, first question here, and it is coming from Just Win, who asked, did you expect the defense to outperform the offense against Tennessee? I did not. Those new coaches have my respect. Clearly, they know what they're doing with schemes and can push the right buttons with the players. All right, an aside here. They allowed 486 yards. Tennessee might have the best offense in the country. Arkansas did hold them to a season low in yards. That's still way too many points, way too many yards to win games.
They held them to a season low in points.
They did.
They were 2 of 9 on third down. That was huge. I'm not saying those numbers are good. They are good compared to what we expected out of this defense based on what they've been doing in previous games. Mm-hmm. So I think you got to give credit. First of all, I think even though Petrino, when the game was over, gave all the credit to the players, he deserves credit, in my opinion, for knowing where the problems were on defense, knowing who needed to be replaced, and who he needed to put in those positions, because that all worked out. So yeah, those new coaches deserve a lot of credit. The players deserve credit, but I think Petrino deserves credit, and it really surprised me. I thought, I was thinking they might score 50 points on Arkansas based on what I'd seen against Notre Dame, and it didn't happen. The thing you have to be cautious about is that when you get an interim coach, there is historically a good first game.
Absolutely.
And then sometimes it drops off.
Even Barry Lunny. In 2019.
Sometimes it drops off after that. So we'll see. I think this week is a bigger challenge because A&M is better than Tennessee. They're more balanced between offense and defense. So if Arkansas can, I don't expect them to win, but if they can just do what they did in this game, make it competitive, be in the game, not just get blown out, if the offense can somehow figure out a way to not to fumble 14 times because these guys are good, then, then we'll say, okay, maybe something's happening here.
You surprised in any way at just how confident Bobby Petrino is? Because in the moment, it seems like he believes so much in what he's been doing. I've been saying this the last 12 days. To me, it's almost like he never left. He's just so comfortable in this position as head coach.
He was smiling in that press conference after the game. He didn't smile a lot.
I thought he might have gotten a little emotional. I literally don't know if it might have been like the sniffles or something, or if he was getting a little choked up because it was, kind of timely at that point.
When he was here before, he just smiled a lot in press conferences. He was smiling after that game. He was smiling today in his press conference. He seems relaxed. Now, I had somebody tell me he's smiling because he knows he's got the job. Well, he doesn't know that right now, unless they've told him something that we don't know about. But I do. He's different than he was. He really is. You can't convince me he's not a different person than he was, and clearly he can still coach. So, I don't know.
All right, next question here coming from Fired Sam. Now Hunter wants to know, how can Bobby get this job when his offense continues to sputter? Yeah, the defense got better, but you can't shut out for a whole quarter against Tennessee with their offense and win. That third quarter, it was a problem. It really was. And they had a critical turnover.
Yeah,
but it was a bummer how flat they were.
And I think the turnover is a bigger issue because they got to solve that problem. And we'll talk about that here in a minute on another question. The only thing I would say about that is they got shut out in one quarter. They scored in the others. And I like the way they bounced back in the fourth quarter. They outscored Tennessee in the fourth quarter. That game could have been a blowout. Midway through that fourth quarter, it looked like, now this is going to turn into a rout. Mm-hmm. And they bounced back and got within a field goal. So, again, I just think this was all better than I thought it would be. I mean, we could sit here and argue about numbers and things like that, but I think if you're just looking at, did this guy take this team and make it better? Yes, he did.
To me, it did seem like Tennessee might have let off the gas a little bit. They kind of let their guard down, but credit to Arkansas, 17-point game. They didn't turtle. They showed the fight. To you, is that a sign of buy-in for the players, or is that a sign that the coaches are getting through to this team?
I think it's both. I mean, Petrino talked about how guys came into his office to talk to him personally. He talked about how the upperclassmen, guys that are gone after this year, they don't have any eligibility left. And they were able to talk to some of the other guys and say, look, we got to live for the moment now. We got to do it now. And I guess some of these underclassmen, younger players, bought into it.
Blown away that he could get that kind of alignment and that kind of belief. Even though they didn't win, I do think it is somewhat encouraging that they are taking a step in the right direction. But still have to hang. They've regained the rope. They can't let go of the rope again, kind of thing. All right, next question here coming from Razorback Hobbs, who says, you got to be kidding me, Bobby. Kick the field goal. What are we doing? He's talking about the moment there in the third quarter. I think it was 4th and 3, 4th and 4. They could have tied the game. He passed on the field goal, went for it, and it really did seem to change the tide.
Reading the internet, there were a lot of people that agreed with this, but I felt like he wanted the lead back. They never trailed in the first half. Suddenly they're behind, and I think I want that lead back. I don't want to just tie this thing up.
One of them chasing us.
Yeah, and so I don't mind the aggressiveness. The way he explained it was, he said the play would have worked, but he said I think it was Omega Blake that was not open on the side that Taylor Green was running to.
He was rolling to his offhand.
Yeah, but I can't remember who the other receiver was, but he said he was actually open, wide open on the other side, and if he spotted it, it would have worked. So Petrino's always like, the play was good, we just didn't execute. I didn't have any problem with him doing that. I think you've got to be aggressive. You're not here, just to get by. You want to turn things around. You want to win this game. You don't win it by playing safe.
We didn't come here to paint. All right, so a follow-up to that. To me, I loved Bobby's explanation. After the game, we're playing what could be the best offense in the country. We need points to win this game. Kicking field goals, punting, that's not going to do it. However, again, just to couch what I'm saying there, don't you have to understand score and situation? Because especially being there, I don't know what it's like on TV, you can feel Tennessee was kind of tight. So to me, score and situation, when your offense had turned over the ball, the defense got it right back, which was fantastic. Maybe you should have known the feel of the game there a little bit better. Let's take the points. Let's tie the game. Let's keep the pressure on Tennessee.
Again, I think if this were a normal situation where he's the head coach, he's got the job, he's not sitting here going, gee whiz, I can't afford any mistakes, maybe he would have been relaxed enough to think like that. But I think he was just aggressive. I think he just, hey, I got one shot at this thing. Here's what I have to do.
Do you feel that changed the game, or not necessarily? It was more the turnovers.
Well, I mean, you can certainly look at it and say on the scoreboard it made
lost by 3 points. You didn't
by
take
3.
the field goal.
So yeah, I can see where some people say he made a mistake.
All right, next question here coming from, I believe this is UR, who asked, does BP need to win some games or just show improvement and ability to compete to win the job?
It's really hard to know. We currently have Penn State, Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State, and UCLA. Those are open. I don't think any of those jobs represent a threat, whereas some of the candidates that
crossover.
Yeah, some of the candidates that whoever's making this decision behind the scenes, and I've said before, I don't think it's your check, but I don't think those are a threat. Here's the problem. If Florida, Kentucky, Auburn, maybe even Oklahoma or LSU open up, then you've got a real issue. Because the people they're looking at are going to go for those jobs, and then you're not going to have who you wanted. And I don't think they're going to drop down and start hiring offensive coordinators over Petrino unless he just totally tanks. So here's what I'm saying. Depending on what happens to their other candidates between now and then, whether or not they go for other jobs, Petrino could end up in a situation where all he really has to be able to demonstrate is, I've made a difference in this team. I've made them better. Now, I still think they have to win a game or two. Maybe.
Absolutely.
Maybe 2.
Absolutely.
Maybe 2 would be enough.
At a dead minimum, 2.
I don't know.
That's still a 2-5 finish.
Yeah. But is there a 2 there? Yeah. I mean, Mississippi State's winnable. I think LSU or Texas is winnable if you catch them on the wrong day.
I think even A&M.
A&M.
I'm not saying they will win, but I see the path.
A&M is the toughest game they have left on their regular season schedule because they're so balanced and they're so good defensively and they're better offensively than people realize. But, I mean, anything can happen. We'll see. I don't really know. I just think he might end up, there are people saying they got to go to a bowl game. That may not necessarily be true.
I would agree with that. I do think they probably have to win 3 games. Just don't get embarrassed. You bring up A&M, how balanced they are, really quite frankly, how quickly Mike Elko has turned this around. So I think it's a great point to the Arkansas coaching search here. Texas A&M fires Jimbo Fisher at $75 million. Everybody thinks that they're going to spend more money. They're going to go out. They're going to get their white whale. Mike Elko was at Duke, maybe not the sexiest hire out there, but he was the right hire. Do you feel that's maybe the path that Arkansas goes? Like, okay, hey, it may not be a Rhett Lashley. It may not be a John Summerall, but we're going to get the right guy with the right resources to do well in this job.
When you look at Elko, he looks like an Aggie. He looks like to me he's been there forever.
Fits in with their culture.
Yeah,
right?
He may not have that background, but I've always said this, you don't have to hire somebody with Razorback connections, somebody that is a Razorback, somebody from this state. You don't have to do that. What you have to do, and I would apply this to the AD position too. You just have to hire somebody that will come in here and adapt to what's here. What Razorback fans don't like is somebody coming in from the outside and saying, nah, the way you're doing stuff here is bad. I want to get rid of that hog call. That makes us look stupid. I don't want this. I don't want that. We got to change this.
We don't like the uniform, all that stuff.
Yeah, come on. We're going to have new uniforms. We're going to do things my way. They hate that. So, yes, you're right in that you've got to get somebody that's a fit.
What can you share about the search? All I'm looking for here is how much confidence do the people you're talking to believe that they will get, maybe not necessarily a big name, but it's going to be different this time. It's not going to be some kind of recycled coach.
Well, what I was hearing last week before this game and before some of this stuff started popping up about other SEC coaching, other SEC schools maybe having openings, what I was hearing is that this committee had zeroed in on about 4 candidates, and Petrino was one of them, and they felt real good they could get one of those 4. Mm-hmm. Even to the point where they have had some candidates reach out to them and they've rejected them already. Now maybe they didn't tell them, but they've talked among themselves and said, no, that's not what we want. So things, again, I go back to what I said before, this could change a lot depending on who gets fired between now and then. Maybe none of those jobs open up. And if they don't, then other things other things are a factor. Now, this whole Lashley thing is interesting because this was a rumor that started last week. It's not my source. That's why I haven't reported it on air or anything. But I know somebody that they do claim to have a source inside the family. And if they're accurate, what Lashley has done, and I don't know if he did it himself or through his agent, but he basically told Arkansas people, if you believe this, look, yes, someday I would like to come back and coach my alma mater. It would be a good thing for me to do. But the time is not right. The timing is bad. I'm early in my head coaching career. I'm at a school. I will tell you this. I've seen so many coaches take the wrong first job and make a mistake. If you get a situation like he's in, where he's got support, the league he's in is not overpowering, he can make some mistakes, have a bad season or two, and still be there, still build himself back up from maybe a hiccup. Mm-hmm. That's a better situation than doing a detour, coming here, going into the mess of the SEC, which is a cutthroat situation. And even if he has a huge buyout, 4 or 5 years from now, he could be he might not be a head coach anymore. So he apparently, if you believe this, told them the timing is not right. Someday it will be. It's not right now. And he acknowledged, I'm not ready for a job like that right now. I'm good with what I'm doing right now. That's supposedly what he said. Now, maybe that's not true. but it sounds like he's pretty smart if that's the position he's taken.
I would believe he could potentially feel that way. I might even believe that some kind of message like that was relayed. But still, if Arkansas is going to pony up and they're going to give him an offer, he can't refuse. That's what changes people.
Because that's what some people think, that they will pony up.
Money is always whenever people say it's not about the money, you know what that really means? They didn't offer me enough. That's all it comes down to. All right, he's Mike Irwin. More Ask Mike after a quick timeout. Back here inside the PTN studio with more with Mike Irwin on Ask Mike this week, breaking everything down coming out of the Tennessee game and where Arkansas goes from here, not only on the field, but also as it relates to the coaching search right now. With Sam Pittman gone, Bobby Petrino running things in the interim. Next question here coming from Engerhog, who wants to know, is it accurate to say our major boosters have historically rarely been united in their support for a specific football coach? Is a coaching search more reliant on booster involvement now than whenever you factor in NIL?
Every once in a while I get a question that's really, really good. You know, you love that question. I like this one. So yes, you're accurate. Historically, boosters are split because they're individual people. And they are, if you go read the internet right now, who needs to be here as the coach? They are too. They all have their own ideas. It's a bigger issue, in my opinion, when you don't have a well-supported AD. Because when you have a well-supported AD, even though there are those divisions, when the AD makes the decision, and he's not going around going, hey, what do I do? He's going to make the decision. Those boosters respect him enough to go, okay, you didn't pick the guy I want.
He's the one to get people in line.
But I accept it. Right now, that's not the case. So the divisions are there, and it's not clear to me. Now, eventually this is going to have to coalesce around somebody. I'm thinking it will be the chancellor. I may be wrong about that, but I think he's the chairman. He theoretically is the chairman of the board of trustees. I mean, he works for them, but he reports to them. But he would be responsible for getting in there and trying to make this work. It might be somebody on the board, but somebody's going to have to bring these divisions together at some point. Now, is it more likely to have these booster divisions because of NIL? Which is relatively new? Yes, because here's what happens. You not only have to please somebody that's a booster, you're going to be asking them for money.
Yep.
So what are you going to do if you don't pick the guy they want, but you still need their money?
And everybody that gives at least $5,000, they think they have a say.
That's right. So now, once again, if you've got a well-supported AD and somebody that knows how to communicate with boosters, he can go say, look, I know I didn't pick your guy. Here's why I picked the guy I did, but boy, I really need help. And maybe he'll be successful, maybe not in every case. But a good AD can get that money out of some boosters that maybe you didn't hire the person that they wanted. Now that's not the case. You don't have a well-supported AD. So what happens now? I don't know. I think it's going to be much more difficult when they hire somebody that this person doesn't want or that person doesn't want to get NIL money from them. Somebody's going to have to unify everybody and say, look, we got to support this guy and we need money, and so let's do it. And I'm not sure it's going to work. I'm going to wait and see because I don't know.
You've been doing this for 50 years. So I'm not asking about this specific case, but just traditionally, tell me the hierarchy of how a major coaching search goes. What I mean by that, you got the AD, you got the board, which the board they're basically boosters.
That's right.
And then you have the influential boosters. Traditionally, who would you say usually has the most say?
I would say the AD, if he's well supported. The bad situations are the ones in which you don't have an AD in place, which we had when we ended up with Chad Morris. Yep. You had an interim AD in place, so you don't have a strong AD in place. And then the boosters are all over the place. A group of them from Springdale supporters tried to bring in Gus. That didn't work. Here's Jerry Jones swooping in and going, hey, it's Chad Morris guy. Coaches my son. No, he's pretty good. Or my grandson. He's pretty good. And so that's what you don't want. But that's sort of what we may have right now.
All right, next question here coming from Hog Redneck, who asks, is there anybody in the offensive staff that knows how to teach ball security? I could seriously argue that 3 fumbles cost us 3 games. We could be 5-1 right now. It drives me nuts. If Arkansas didn't turn the ball over, Mike, they probably beat Tennessee. I think the Braylon Russell play, credit Tennessee, I think they made a good play there. The Talon fumbles, he's kind of pressing. They didn't handle the pressure well, and that's what it seemed kind of led to.
Well, there's two issues there. The Traylon situation, he's got to learn when he rolls to his left. He apparently doesn't. One thing a good quarterback needs is peripheral vision.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he has it. Or just feeling that somebody's back there. Twice he had somebody right behind him and he tried to throw, and they were able to get a hand on his arm. So maybe it's an issue if you're going to move against your arm, which is what you're doing. You're moving to the right. If you're moving to the left, you're going to have to look to the right. You're going to have to look this way, and you can see out there better, and you get a better idea of who's behind you. So maybe he needs to roll more in the other direction. How about this? How about don't roll out like that if you plan to throw? Yeah. Only roll out if you're going to run. There are ways to deal with that.
There was pressure that kind of flushed him, yeah.
The other issue, though, is the fumble, one with the wide receiver, the other two with the backs. And this is clearly a case of not understanding. Anybody that's running in the open field and using their speed, they're not going to have the ball wrapped up. Mm-hmm. You got to carry it this way. Nobody can run down the field like this with speed. So you've got to know, okay, I'm in an open field situation, I'm running, I can do this. But when you see tacklers closing in on you, even if it's just one, that's when the ball has to come in. That's when you have to wrap it up. That's when you got to have it next to your chest. And it didn't happen with Braylon Russell. It didn't happen with Mike Washington. And it didn't happen with the receiver that fumbled. Now, Russell is interesting to me because I may have told this story on Ask Mike. I think I did. When the Mike Washington fumble occurred against Memphis, I know somebody that was down on the field when they were discussing what they were going to do on that play right before it happened. Mm-hmm. And he said Braylon Russell was standing behind the group, but he kept repeating over and over again, ball security, ball security. If you looked at his reaction when he fumbled, he was aghast. He was like, oh, I can't believe I did that. So even he fumbled, and he doesn't usually fumble. So they've just got to emphasize that. To me, it's not that little thing where you're running and people are hitting you in practice with a little foam ball. You got to devise something where somebody descends on a guy that's running and then you wrap up. It's a mental thing more than anything else.
Yeah, and the Mike Washington fumble and then the Braylon Russell fumble this week. That was his first career fumble too. Both of them kind of bizarre in this sense. They're on their way to the ground. So it's not like, somebody's kind of knocking it out and there's this, poor ball security kind of thing. They're just getting hit at a really unfortunate time. And that one critical, it's in the red zone. Arkansas had 2 red zone turnovers. It really could have been.
But you could still see when he got hit, his arm was like this with the ball here instead of this.
Ball security is job security. That goes for the players and that goes for the coach as well. Next question here coming from Jake Hogg 33 who says, we never get that fluke turnover or break, it seems. Always playing uphill. You would think at some point it would shift. Maybe it will one of these days. Hey, 2021, they had some good luck under Pittman. Seems like
first of all, Arkansas needs to force more turnovers. That's a whole defensive issue. But we're not really talking about turnovers. We're talking about something that just happens at a critical moment in the game in which somebody goes, here's the game, because we see that all the time. I'm telling you, you can go back and talk to any coach and he'll talk about his career. If he's honest, he'll say, boy, we were lucky to win that game. We got a good break here. And Sam Pittman was just snake bit. Now, whether Petrino is or not, this is just one time for him. But I got to believe when you're talking odds, sooner or later, Arkansas do a thing just like a gift that comes out of nowhere. Here, take this ball, beat us, because we're not going to win. You'd like it to happen to the other team and not Arkansas.
All right, next question here coming from them Vols. Let me get a Tennessee troller here on Ask Mike. Arkansas is a good team. SEC football is rough. Good luck the rest of the way of the season. That is true. Arkansas does have a good team. There's a lot of parity. So, there may not be that much of a difference between a 3-9 team and a 9-3 team.
Yeah, I put that in because you don't see that very much. And it was on the internet. And the guy is whoever he is, classy fan. Yeah. Unfortunately, I also saw one went, go back home, little Arkansas, you don't matter. And too bad you need a good coach, you won't get one. So you get fans doing this stuff, more of that than the other. But look, it's just the way it is. Football is I've been around football fans my whole life, and I'm telling you, even growing up in a little hometown and men down at the East Side Cafe, you'd get some guys that would be real classy about stuff, and others would just go, I'm going to say what I want to say. So I don't worry too much about that stuff.
All right, little commentary here. One, going to Knoxville. Have you ever been to Knoxville?
Yes.
Incredible. The first time I ever experienced it, the game atmosphere, Neyland Stadium, the city itself really lives up to the hype. All the stuff on the water, and you made the point of the fans. It seems like a polite fan. We had people inviting us on their boats, asking us if we need anything. Could not be any better. The other one who says you need a good coach, you're probably not going to get one. Baloney. These arrogant Tennessee fans smelling their own farts right now after, Butch Jones and Derek Dooley and Jeremy Pruitt. They screwed it up. Unbelievable to be in that city and to feel all the resources they have, all the tradition that they could go 15 years of just being not dreadful, but borderline embarrassing. And now all of a sudden they got Josh Heupel and they think they can do no wrong.
I mean, they went through some bad times.
They fired Philip Fulmer, and look how bad it got. It's kind of a thought on James Franklin to me. Penn State, be careful what you wish for. Don't think you're guaranteed to get better just because you fired your head coach.
Yeah, and Phil Fulmer would have come here at one point. I don't think they took him seriously.
Was he the sitting head coach at Tennessee, or back when he was an assistant, maybe under Johnny Majors?
No, this is after he'd been fired.
Oh, okay. So much older. In
he was not employed, and I can't remember which one of those it was, but I think it might have been after Bielema. But anyway, at some point out there, he did reach out. He would come here. I thought maybe it would have been worth it.
Phil Fulmer, Les Miles, apparently guys that have
I think here he wouldn't have had that safe he had in his home, supposedly. The one where you bring recruits in. Yeah. There were recruits that said you went to his house on a recruiting visit, and he said, "Hey, I got some food in there for you, some McDonald's. Go into my office." And he'd go in there, and there's McDonald's sacks, and then there's this safe that's open, and there's money in it. I don't know if that's true or not. That was just a rumor.
Now you can do it all legally, and Tennessee is finding the money. Look, I do think, Mike, Arkansas is a good job. There's no excuse for why they've basically become the doormat in the SEC, or pretty close to it. It's sad how far it's fallen, but Tennessee, I feel that's a great job. No excuse for what happened, because that program, Petrino beat Derek, I think it was 48, the Joe Adams punt return game. I mean, embarrassing.
Yeah,
that a player could make a play like that. Just completely ridiculous how far off that program had fallen. But it just shows you hire the right guy, you can't get it back. Right. He's Mike Irwin. We got more with Mike coming up on Ask Mike after a timeout. Back here with Mike Irwin, another edition of Ask Mike, diving right back into our question. Up next here, we got Smash Mouth 2004, who asks, is it true Lashley formally turned down the job and now it's either Sumrall or Mullen? And I think the real answer there is nobody knows until everyone knows.
Yeah, I mean, again, we went over that. It's just a story that's out there. It was on the internet. It was on Hogville for sure because I read it. And I know somebody that claims they have a source within the family, and they said it's pretty much true. Again, if he says that, he's smart. But a lot of times coaches, when it comes to, you've mentioned it, when it comes to money, sometimes you're not smart. So we'll see if that happens. I like the kid, and the part of that rumor that I liked was the one where he said, here's the way it was put to me. What he really said was, I do want to come back to Arkansas at some point, to my alma mater, but I want to come back as a successful head coach, not somebody they would throw pitchforks at. And that tells me if he said that, then he's watched what's happened here. He watched what happened to Pittman, what happened to all these coaches. Because, look, he was at Auburn for a while during all that. I mean, when Bielema got fired, Auburn came in here and beat Arkansas. Gus got back on the plane, and I'm sure Lashley got on the plane. Gus's wife stayed here. She started hanging out with her friends, and that's where she sort of dropped the hint that he might be interested in coming back. And then that led to Jeff Long being fired, them offering him a whopping contract, and then his agent used that contract to get the same thing at Auburn. But Lashley would have seen all of that. And so he's probably, if he really said that, pitchforks, he's probably accurate.
I don't know if you remember this, and a lot of people have forgotten it. You know, it's a selective memory kind of thing. Rhett Lashley's last year at Auburn, Gus Malzahn, his mentor, basically had to fire him He gave up play calling. He let Lashley did it. The offense got even worse. And then Rhett Lashley ends up at UConn, an offensive coordinator, really coaching graveyard. A memory for how that all went down, how that situation evolved. It's quite literally like a father firing his son.
I have not heard anything that would indicate Lashley holds a grudge against him because of that. He probably had been in the business long enough to know that that stuff happens, that he himself someday as a head coach might have to do it. Yeah. It happens all the time, I promise you. This is why, if I had any advice to any coach, I would say don't hire your friends. Don't hire people you're close to. Hire people that it's just business. Yeah. You hire them for a business reason. That way, when you have to let go of them, hey, no,
I'm not getting results.
It's just business.
No different than you or I, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this stuff can happen. Lane Kiffin, there's a wonderful documentary on ESPN. Urge anybody to check it out. He basically had to fire his dad at USC. That's how bad. Yeah. And this is a legend. Yeah. Coached at Arkansas, won a Super Bowl at Tampa Bay. That was how bad it got. Next question here coming from Mousetown. That's my guy who wants to know if Petrino doesn't get the job and you were Juracek, who would you pick and why? I'd go with Gruden. I think he would bring the kind of energy to the program that we need. One thing I'll say about John Gruden, Arkansas will raise a whole lot of money if somehow, some way he's the head coach.
Yeah, he's personable. He can come in. He'll make everybody like him. The only knock on that hire is he's never been a college head coach, and he hasn't been in the college game for a long time.
1991.
I don't think any of this stuff that happened to him in the NFL would be an issue. All the emails and all that. He's about to, looks like he may win a lawsuit on that deal anyway.
Sure does.
So I don't think that's a factor. But I do think you've got to ask yourself, can he recruit? The big issue would be, who does he bring on his staff? Does he bring a bunch of NFL coaches, or does he at least have a mix? Because I think that's what's going on with Belichick right now. That's what I'm reading is he came in there, he's brought in an entire NFL mentality to a college program, and it's not working.
And his kids and buddies, and they're just not qualified for the job.
Yeah, so we'll see. But I think Gruden will get a job. I do. I think there's enough openings right now that he's going to get a job. I'm just not sure it's here.
I'm not sure he can get a better job than Arkansas. Like, would Florida really go that route and hire? Just all hypotheticals. If the college is going to be the avenue that John Gruden has to go, I'm not sure how much better he can do than Arkansas.
Well, I don't think it necessarily has to be an SEC job. There's a bunch of jobs that are already
Penn
open.
State's a good job.
Yeah, he really won't get that job, but there are some others he might. And there'll be more. That's the point. These days, it's always been that way. It's worse these days. I mean, coaches just don't get as much time as they used to.
How about a little story time with Mike here? John Gruden is a name to me, I think, like, well, you'll win the press conference. Can you remember a time, basketball, football, whatever, where maybe Arkansas was too concerned with winning over the fan base, winning the press conference, and it cost them?
Hiring a guy that's just funny.
I mean, well, for instance, Mike Anderson, which he brought a lot of stability to the program. He was one of the hottest coaches in the country. They won the press conference with Mike Anderson. And he did some good things, but eventually he fell out of favor. Mike
Anderson was very conservative. That's the way I viewed him. Yeah. He was very careful in his press conference. And it could be funny. Bob Holt used to we've talked about what Bob would do. He wanted a certain quote, and if you didn't give it to him, he'd just ask the question. And Mike was the first one to realize that. And one day he just said, "Hey, Bob, whatever it is you want me to say, just tell me what it is, and I'll say it." So he could be funny, but he was mostly pretty serious. I never really figured out what happened to Mike Anderson because he was on the hot track. He was on the way up. He'd won at UAB. He'd won
big at Missouri.
He'd won big at Missouri, and the only explanation I've ever been given, and it may be accurate or not, was that when he got here, it was too personal. It stopped being a job, and it was something personal, and it changed him. I don't know. I've also been told that when it came to recruiting, he was one of the most straight-up, honest people you will ever meet. A guy told me he won't violate rules that aren't even rules. He just...
And because of that, he didn't get the players.
He didn't
get the in-state kids.
There were two things that hurt him. Not winning games in the NCAA. He got to the NCAA tournament. He just didn't win games there. and the other was he was losing in the top 2 or 3 in-state guys, and they didn't like that. So that's what did him in.
All right, next question here coming from the ghost of Archie Love, who says, get Mike Shanahan's name in the mix. Indiana OC and QB coach, his resume speaks for itself.
That's not the NFL Mike Shanahan. This guy's a lot younger. And he's not the quarterback's coach. He's the offensive coordinator, but he's a receivers coach. He's been with Cignetti for 4 seasons, and yes, they've had big numbers all of that time, even back before Indiana. It's just not my impression they're going to hire an assistant coach.
I would agree. It's something would have to go wrong. It feels that way.
Yeah, I think if you keep Petrino before you do that. I think they'd be absolutely nuts to not give the job to Petrino and go hire an assistant coach from somewhere.
Maybe if it's like an NFL offensive coordinator that could have like a little bit of experience, that could be a different situation. But I agree with you. I don't think they're going to go the route of a coordinator. But it has happened before at Texas, hiring Steve Sarkisian. Even before that, Will Muschamp. Will Muschamp didn't work out. Kirby Smart hired as a coordinator. Probably the best coach in college football right now. Dabo Swinney had a decade and a half, an incredible run, hired as an assistant coach. So there are pathways out there where if you find the right guy, they can find the success. All right, next question here coming from more on the Arkansas job. Razor Alex 88, who says Penn State releases James Franklin. How do you think this affects our coaching search? They did not release James Franklin. James Franklin was fired. And all these schools out there and athletic directors that are crying poor, Penn State paid him $50 million to go away.
Yeah, and then there's a separate question that
Marty
goes.
Bird proxy here. Yeah.
He wants to know additionally.
Was there some discontent at Penn State with Franklin previously, or was the losses this year the lone reason for his dismissal? I think they lost so many close games that he was kind of teetering, and all it took was one bad season.
Well, here's the thing. Just a tick under 70% of his games.
Incredible. 9.5 wins a year.
Third or fourth among active coaches right now in wins over the last few years.
34-8 the last 3.5 years.
So he won games. He didn't beat their traditional rivals, Ohio State and Michigan.
Correct. Didn't win the big ones.
Didn't have a good record against top 10 teams, and evidently that's what they came to want. But I saw something that I found fascinating, and it was something I watched last night on my phone. I lay in bed at night just looking at stuff.
You and the rest of us, Mike.
I love it. And this was an ex-player, a guy that had played under him. And they were interviewing him, and he said, look, I love him to death, and he's a great coach. But he said, you know what? In these last 3 press conferences, there's something going on with him. He's not the same guy. What the implication is there's burnout here. Not unlike, although Cal wasn't as obvious with it, but not unlike what happened to Cal, where he really needed another job to revive himself. And I think Franklin's going to get a job if he wants it. Somebody's going to get him and get him at a discount because he's getting $8 million a year for the next 6 years. $8 million a year. So you could pay him $4 and he'd still have the other $4. So somebody's going to get him as a bargain, and he's going to win because he's good. I mean, he won 9 games. 2 of the 3 years he was at Vanderbilt, they won 9 games.
Nobody has ever won that. Even Clark Lee, the best he's ever done there, 7 wins.
He got him going the first year, and then he won 9-9, and that's what got him the Penn State job. And he went to Penn State at a time when that program was reeling because of that Sandusky scandal.
Where they were still under sanctions when he got there.
Yeah, and he just built them back up. So you're ungrateful, you just are. You didn't allow him to have an off year, and that's crazy.
I don't know if you ever heard this, if you remember Nolan Richardson saying this. You created a monster.
Yeah, and you have to feed it.
The monster gets hungry. You got to feed the monster.
Yeah.
I think that happened at Penn State. He elevated the program to a 9 or 10 win a year program, but eventually you do that for a decade, that's a problem. Nolan Richardson, I think he got fired the year they went to the NCAA tournament, didn't they? No, that wasn't the case. But the year before they went, it wasn't like the program was off the rails. It's just they expected more.
Well, speaking of Mike Anderson, Nolan was at a banquet one night when it was downtown Fayetteville. It was at the town center. The big banquet, and Mike Anderson was there, and he was up on the dais, and Nolan was up there with him. And they let Nolan get up there and speak, and Nolan turned to Mike and he said, I love you to death, but if you don't do something, you're going to be gone. I mean, he knew. He was speaking from the heart. This is what they'll do to you. And there's no free pass on this, you know. It's just produce or be gone. Nolan, I think Nolan was ready to go, but I think he needed another option is what he needed. He needed to leave here and go somewhere else and win again, and I think he could have done it. But what people didn't understand about Nolan, because they watched him on press conferences when he was always mad in press conferences. In real life, away from those press conferences, he loved this place. And you can't convince me, because he's been here the whole time. He never left, really. He may have gone that one year he coached. I don't know where he lived when he was coaching in the WNBA.
Tulsa.
He may have just gone over to Tulsa and stayed in an apartment. But he's had that ranch out there northwest of Fayetteville forever. And he loves it out there, and he stays out there, and he loves Northwest Arkansas. And he could have very easily gone back to El Paso, and he didn't. Why? Because this is his home. So I think that's why Ohio State wanted him. They would have taken him, but he just didn't want to go anywhere else. And then he stayed here and then ended up getting fired.
James Franklin, hey, you know, Lane Kiffin reinvented himself at Ole Miss as a fired at Steve Sarkisian.
Nolan could have done that. I swear he could have, but he didn't want to go anywhere
Sarkisian,
else.
you know, falling out of favor there at USC, rehabilitated Alabama. It can be done. We can't just, you know, turn our nose up at some of these fired head coaches. All right, one more segment to go on Ask Mike after our final timeout. Back here on Ask Mike, final segment as we take this thing home. Arkansas Razorbacks in football getting set to take on Texas A&M. Question here coming from Eddie Lynn, who wants to know anything noteworthy coming out of the two baseball exhibition games on Saturday. I like it here, changing up the flavor here, moving on from football. Talking a little baseball, Mike.
Yeah, Arkansas won both games, 8-1 over Little Rock, next day 5-3 over Dallas Baptist. Here's the story. Kahio Aloy, you may remember he was in Summer League Baseball. Was it in the Cape Cod League?
I would assume Cape Cod, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was in the Cape Cod League. And he had to leave, and supposedly it had some sort of medical issue. He gets back here, and he's losing weight. And at first, I think they thought he might have mono, but then they later determined that's probably not what it was. And then some thought, well, maybe this is some weird COVID thing. And then they said, nah, it's probably not it. Some sort of a, I don't know, viral infection, something that he had. And it laid him low for a while, and he was losing weight, and they were pretty concerned. He started bouncing back a while back, and he got his strength back, and he actually was able to go back and start practicing a few, I don't know if it was a few days or a week or so before these two exhibition games. But they were shocked because he comes back, he hadn't been involved at all, and I think he may have hit 2 home runs. He's just doing everything out there. I had somebody tell me, well, I don't know what they're going to do because they got a lot of outfielders and they got him in the outfield, but they got to find a place for him. Maybe he'll be a DH. I don't know. But that was one big thing. And then Ryder Helfrich, and I've mentioned this before, Arkansas already has 3 Golden Spikes winners. I think they've got more than any other baseball program.
Well, and I think Benintendi was the first. So
he was
just
the first.
3 in the last, 12 years.
Yeah. And he could be the 4th.
Wow.
I mean, Helfrich is that good. He can hit. When he was first here, he didn't deliver at the plate, but he was a really good catcher. He's improved as a catcher, and he's definitely come around at the plate. He got hurt in the first game, and a lot of people were very concerned about that, the people that weren't there. But it turned out to be he could have played. Dave Van Horn was being careful. So the good news is it's not something that's going to bother him into next year. The thing I would say is baseball season is going to be here before you know it. And I always love January because we get to go over there and watch them in some of these preseason, and Van Horn's talking, and then they go off. They have the one series at home, and then they go off to Arlington, and you get to watch them at Arlington.
Opening day this year in Arlington.
So they're not having the home series here like they usually do. They usually play at least 3 games here, sometimes 4 or 5. So they're going straight to Arlington. And Arlington's fun. It's fun to watch that. You need to go down there.
We will be there. Opening day, we got a Final Four team from a year ago. We will be there on opening day.
It's a great trip because, number one, you're not going to encounter any weather. You're not going to freeze.
Indoors, yeah.
You're not going to get rained on.
Not going to be hot.
Not going to be any snow. It's just fun. And if you're lucky, you get yourself a room right next to that place. You just walk back and forth. You have a good time.
You've been down for the event?
Yeah, I've been there before.
And I've heard about 10,000, 8 to 10,000 people,
Yes.
which unfortunately cavernous MLB stadiums, but still that's a good little crowd for
They
a college
can make
baseball
some
game.
noise. Razorback, you put 7, 8, 9,000 Razorback fans in that place, they'll make some noise.
I mean, Arkansas alumni in Dallas, that is, Fayetteville West for sure. Whippersnapper here, final question of the week saying, Old Musselman seems to be taking a shot at Cal in Arkansas. I'd say he is just jealous. Mike, what do you know about this? Eric Musselman running his mouth a little bit too much?
No, that is from an On3 article, and every once in a while you get these, and I think they're just trying to get clicks.
For the likes and clicks.
Here's
That's what we do here on Ask
Here's
Mike.
what happened. He was explaining his tough first year at USC because they didn't make the NCAA tournament, and it was disappointing. And he was saying, well, Calipari's talked about all the stuff he went through at Arkansas. He said he got here and he didn't have a team. Turned out he at least had one player from the year before. He said, I didn't have any. So you can say, well, he's trying to one-up Calipari if you want. I didn't read it that way. He made some statement about that which would lead you to believe all Calipari did was have to bring his wife down here. He said, I had to sit here and wait for my daughter to get out of school. That was an additional thing, and I had to move them both to California or whatever. Again, I didn't see that as him trying to do anything to one-up Cal or say, I have some reasons why I didn't do what he did. I just think he was basically saying what happened. Now, look, there are a few Razorback fans that somehow have an issue with him. I'm thinking, are you stupid? He came in here, he made Arkansas basketball relevant in the NCAA tournament again. He did all this stuff. He went to a couple of Sweet 16s and Elite 8. He did all this stuff, and what he did it mainly with was the transfer portal before the transfer portal involved NIL money. He just did a good job of finding kids that wanted to transfer and convince them, hey, if you come here, we'll put you on a winning team. He'd find a guy that was good on a team that was losing and say, wouldn't you be happier on a team that's in the NCAA tournament and winning? And so he was successful. And if you're mad at him for leaving, if he doesn't leave, you don't have Cal. Are you nuts? Yeah. What reason would you have to be
coach in college basketball?
What reason would you have to be mad at this guy?
Unbelievable how that all unfolded. All it took was a guy leaving for SMU to change this whole thing.
I like Muss. Now, he was hard to deal with in press conferences because he would pout. If they lost a game, they'd have those computer screens that would put him on, and he'd get down below that thing and kind of duck around, and you'd be going, what's wrong with you? And he would get real vague on some of the answers. And if you ever went to one of his practices, he was tough on his players. He was tough on his coaches. He was Bobby Petrino the first time here. That's what I thought when I saw him for the first time. This is a basketball version of Petrino. He's mean, but that's just his style. I never held it against him.
He also turned things around.
He did
very quick. It was a really good hire. Didn't end on the best of terms, but Arkansas, the AP poll top 25 is out, Mike. Arkansas 14th in the country. That's number 3, I believe, in the SEC. Florida 2 or 3, something like that. Kentucky is ahead of the Hogs, and then Arkansas coming in at 4th.
They were picked 5th at SEC Media Days. 5th.
Well, I think they're worse 4th. I think they're 3rd in the poll in the SEC teams.
SEC Media Days, it was 5th.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the SEC media. These aren't coaches. These aren't basketball.
The SEC Calipari agenda.
These are yo-yos like me in there. And historically, the SEC media poll, I don't care what sport you're, I don't know if they have one for tennis or whatever, but when you do a media days thing, the SEC media is just wrong. They usually can get maybe the top 2 teams right. They're wrong after that. I don't think Arkansas is the 5th best team in the SEC in basketball.
I think they're better than that, and I think they're going to have a really good year.
Yeah.
I think Cal has kind of changed a little bit what he does traditionally. Not that he's getting away from the one and done and the high school recruiting. That's still his lifeblood. But the big men they're bringing in, older players, tougher players. I think they're going to lean on that in March.
And they were impressive in this, whatever this thing they did down in Hot Springs. They looked good. Carter Knox looked good. Trevin Brazil looked good.
Darius Acuff.
Darius Acuff looked good.
Billy Richmond had a lot of energy.
Billy Richmond, a lot of these guys. And what Cal said was, the big thing that he has to do is convince each one of them that this is not about them. It's about the team. You have to approach this from a team standpoint. That's what Bobby Petrino just got through telling his guys. So there's some things in coaching that are universal.
Calipari, the best salesman in college basketball history, doing a great job, and what a great marriage for him to, really breathe some new life into Arkansas basketball. All right, he's Mike Irwin. I'm Trey Dare. That's it for this episode of Ask Mike.